Hey Sid, good to see you again, mate.
Yeah, hey Charlie,
Oh,
glad to be here.
Yeah, amazing. So obviously we know each other pretty well, but for the viewers back home, Sid, could you just give us a little quick insight to yourself and before we go on to Hathora?
Yeah, absolutely. So hey everyone, my name is Sid. I am one of the founders and the CEO at Hathora. My background actually, my entry into gaming is pretty recent. Been working on Hathora for about three and a half years now. And prior to that, I was actually mostly a software engineer, mostly focused on the infrastructure space. So I was at Palantir and Databricks, and I was responsible for the cloud teams at both places. And my teams were responsible for all the production infrastructure that was hosting our customer workloads. So we're spending upwards of hundreds of millions a year on cloud with a global multi-region deployment. Everything from security, compliance, operations, CI/CD platforms. That's the purviews that my teams had to maintain. And at Hathora, what we're primarily focused on is being the best hybrid cloud orchestrator on the planet. And what that means is, for a lot of video games that need dedicated servers, which is most of the twitchy, high performance action games, you need low latency. You need the server spun up really quickly. You need high compute performance as well. And so that's what Hathora does. We work with bare metal providers. And then as the bare metal starts to fill up, we automatically start adding cloud capacity as well, so that from a gamer experience, they're always playing on a server close by, and it's always available. But then from the studio perspective, it's highly cost effective.
So obviously Hathora's been around for 3.5 years. You really have grown a lot of interest in the gaming scene. We're seeing some really cool launches. Ex-Blizzard employees released Stormgate, went with you guys, and did a great job with that launch. We're really, and I think I speak on behalf of a lot of people in the industry when we say we're really excited to see the next project you guys are working on. So are you able to share maybe a story at this stage?
Yeah.
The next big launch?
Yeah, I can share a sneak peek.
Yeah, awesome.
So we work with 1047 Games. 1047 has made a game called Splitgate. They're about to make a new game called Splitgate 2. Actually, the trailer's out. They've also released the game in alpha for short windows here and there.
Yeah.
But we're really excited to be supporting the launch this summer. And given that the first game had millions of players and hundreds of thousands of concurrent players at the same time globally, this is hopefully going to be a big one.
Absolutely. I think the best thing for Splitgate 2 is the game mode. You've got 4v4v4, if I've got front correct?
There's going to be different game modes, basically.
Yeah.
So they only really announced one, but there's a lot more they're cooking up as well.
Okay, awesome. More things to see.
Absolutely.
Amazing. Yeah, I mean, I've seen some reviews on the early access, and players are really excited to see all the changes in the turns in the gameplay. So I think it's really awesome to play when it comes out. So obviously you've already kind of touched on this with obviously the value that Hathora is bringing for studios. You're really helping them reduce their overheads when it comes to their infrastructure. But obviously not everyone is making a multiplayer game, and there's after the COVID boom, we're seeing quite a difficult time the last couple of years, I'd say, in the industry. What do you think is the biggest challenge that you think studios are facing right now? And
yeah, I would love to say servers are the biggest challenge, but honestly, I think the problem is actually in capturing users' imagination and their attention, essentially. You look at where 70% of player time is being spent on games that are more than 7 years old, and you have these live services games that have been able to really keep the game fresh and retain their audience. Like Fortnite, Valorant, League, these forever games. And I do think it's the barrier to entry for a new game is just so high because, yes, when those games initially launched, maybe they shipped on a $50 to $200 million budget, but they've invested hundreds of millions of dollars since. And people have also sunk in tens of hundreds of dollars into the game. And they built communities in that space as well. So in order for a new game to break out today, the bar is just much higher. And interestingly enough, for me personally, I actually don't think the competition is just other games. It's actually other forms of entertainment as well, right? So nowadays, I'll even take myself. I used to be a huge Dota 2 player. It used to take 5 minutes to launch Steam and get the game updated, and then 10 minutes of matchmaking, and then by the time I got into the game, it was already 15 minutes. But now, I open TikTok and I have the instant dopamine hit.
Yeah.
Right? So, like, I think what modern games are actually competing with are these alternate forms of media and entertainment.
Absolutely.
So it's tough for a lot of players out there, but I'm really excited to see how the industry is going to innovate over the next couple of years and try to make gaming a little more accessible while keeping the quality bar very high.
Yeah, I think you've hit the nail on the head there. I mean, just a little bit of my background before I was a teacher, and I saw the students I used to teach, they were very much similar. They were, like ourselves, quick dopamine hit, expecting to see, pick up a game and play it straight away. Whereas, like, gone are the days where you load up World of Warcraft and you spend the first week trying to figure out how to even do the first quest in Elwyn Forest. So I think we're seeing a big shift. But obviously, the gaming industry always steps up, and we always get really cool, awesome titles coming out. And I think I'm looking forward to see where it does take us. I think as it's going to be an exciting year.
Absolutely, yeah.
Awesome.
There's some exciting launches lined up.
So we've just touched on obviously the industry challenges, but let's circle back to Hathora for a second. Has Hathora got any big plans like for the rest of 2025 and on to 26?
Yeah, obviously our most important priority is making sure the games that are launching on our platform go off without a hitch.
Yep.
Last year that was slightly more of a concern before we had launches, but given how well the launches last year went, that's slightly less of a concern for us this year.
Yeah.
But that doesn't mean we can let our guard down. I
Absolutely.
think only the paranoid survive. I'm a really true believer of that.
Yeah.
So with a couple of launches coming up over the summer and beyond, our focus is very much on reliability and availability, and we constantly scale test our own platforms. So that's going to continue remaining a huge focus for us. And then we're actually starting to see some demand for use cases beyond game servers, actually. So we've been chatting with a few, call them AI companies, but they've been around for almost like a decade at this point, and they are finding that running inference on the cloud is just very expensive. And the other thing with inference is actually you don't need, it's not very stateful. You can basically run those workloads anywhere. And you're not really dealing with a lot of database interactions. You're basically, you take an audio, video, or text file, you process it, and then you push the output out somewhere.
Okay.
So those kinds of workloads, which now we're starting to kind of generalize into what we're calling job runners, are what we're starting to lean a little more into. But it's a very nascent space for us, and we're in the early stages of seeing what's there.
For sure, and I think AI still is, although like you said, some companies have been around for quite a while. It's still a very early, part of the industry, and also a really exciting one to follow. And so, I look forward to quite frankly, learning more from you with the conversations that you have. And obviously at some point maybe there's something that we need to do to help you with that as well. But
absolutely, yeah. Actually, what's really interesting with this job runner kind of paradigm is it's not necessarily just AI and inference.
Yeah.
One of the other use cases that we're exploring in this new paradigm is running Unreal build servers. So with Unreal 5.4 and actually closer with 5.6 especially, Unreal shipped this CI/CD platform called Horde, and Horde has this component called Unreal Build Accelerator. Not really part of Horde. They're two separate things, but they kind of work really well together. And the really cool thing about Unreal Build Accelerator is previously when you had to run all your builds on Windows machines, now Unreal Build Accelerator can distribute it can still generate Windows client builds, but by running on Linux containers.
Oh,
right? So, Linux containers are our bread and butter, and that's kind of one of the very cool use cases that we're starting to prototype with a few customers.
Absolutely, and obviously Linux being open source, it's going to cost you less, so end user doesn't have to pay for that as well. So yeah, amazing. That's really interesting to see where that takes you. So really big plans for Hathora. But obviously, coming from the infrastructure side of things, we work with multiple managed orchestrations. So I think what's really keen for, obviously the viewers back home to really understand is what separates Hathora from, the other managed orchestrations in the market. What is it you guys do that's the special sauce on top?
Yeah, absolutely. So, at its core, if I share the 10,000-foot value prop, it's going to sound very similar to a bunch of other options in the market today. But then, you start unraveling what does that actually mean, and then you get into the details of it. That's where we really start to shine. And all of our current customers have been amazing reference customers for us as well, and they're really thrilled to be partnering with us. It all actually starts with the team.
Absolutely.
and the expertise that we bring to the table, right? So most teams can absolutely build this in-house if they chose to, but they're basically trusting that maybe there's someone else out there that can take this off of our plate and do as good or a better job than they can do in-house,
Yep.
right? And that's the first part where we really shine. Our team is stacked with infrastructure experts. And I'm talking everything from cloud to bare metal like hypervisor management to containers to Kubernetes to like monitoring and observability, alerting.
Absolutely. We've seen that in the conversations we've had as well. Like, your team, they know their stuff. So
Exactly. And so that's kind of what gets customers really interested in wanting to partner with us in the first place. And then the product speaks for itself, right? So I always say there's like 3 core pillars to our platform. One is player experience being great. The second is doing that at a great cost. And the last is making sure the developer's life is amazing. And so I actually think the last thing is what really sets us apart. And so everything from like, how quickly can you iterate a new build on the platform? A couple seconds after the build is uploaded, it's live for you to start launching it.
Amazing.
Right? And we have real-time logs and metrics as well, so you can quickly understand like, hey, what's happening in this game server? Or even if you're having a production issue somewhere, you can quickly look up, hey, for this game server, show me the most recent logs. We can even do things like set up SSH access into the containers, remote debugging into the containers. And ultimately, because it is container-based, you have ultimate control over what's running, right? So you can run things like logging sidecars, like metric sidecars, or the world's your oyster, right? So the cool thing about what we do is we take away a lot of the grunt work without taking away any of the flexibility.
Amazing.
And that's what people really like about the Hathora platform.
Absolutely, I can see. I mean, you're saving so much time for the end developer, but also allowing them to have, like you said, that flexibility and still that control, which I think is really, really key for any multiplayer titles, launch success. So,
Absolutely.
Awesome, amazing. Well, Sid, look, as always, absolute pleasure seeing you again.
Yeah.
And I look forward to continuing working together for your future projects.
Absolutely, Charlie. You guys have been awesome partners for us, and look forward to keep working with you guys.
Awesome, amazing. Cheers, Sid.